Today, we're continuing our series we're calling Setting the Course. So setting the course, meaning what do we have to do in our life in order to get where we want to go in 2021. It's all about spiritual disciplines. So we've talked through several of those each and every week. This week, we're going to be talking about serving, which is essentially kind of part two from last week. So last week was about giving, but the emphasis was more on our finances, monetarily. But then today is serving, which is essentially giving of your time, your skills, some of your things, your homes, whatever it is, to serve others. So we're going to take a look a little about what's that posture, and then how can we make serving meaningful so it's not just going through the motions. But I want to start out just by sharing a story of when I was in ninth grade that's seemingly irrelevant for right now. In ninth grade, hopefully I can make it back to make this anything. If otherwise, just enjoy, the story. In ninth grade, I moved from Texas up to Ohio, and it was in between 8th and ninth grade, right? And so got all my friends, they're gone. They're down in Texas. I've got to start out fresh. And I remember thinking okay, I've got to kind of make a start of this. I'm going to have to find my people. And the first few weeks of school, they said, we're going to have student council elections. And so you can run for that. I said, well, this is perfect. I'll just pretend like I'm from one of the other feeder middle schools into the high school. They don't know who I am. And it didn't seem like that many people were interested in it. And sure enough, it was just me and this other girl, Alexis, and did it by your homeroom class. So it's, there's only 25 of us in homeroom. And then you just get up there and make a speech and kind of make your pitch. So I went up during my time, and I'm like, hey, so I'm Brad. I'd like to run and be a representative, and it's going to be great. I'm going to make school funner and have this. And then my homeroom teacher was my English teacher, and she did not let that one slide. She said, ooh, actually, funner's not a word. And I'm like, we'll make it more fun too, and I'm like, oh no, I blew it, it's like, here I am trying to make a good impression, and my English teacher already is like, you're doing the campaign speech wrong, Sure enough, Alexis was elected the class officer for student council, and I was not representative. That wasn't going to be where my friend group was. I was able to find other friends in other ways, kind of as I grew and developed. But for that one time, I wanted to kind of have an established role, right? I was running into the new school, and I needed to know, all right, kind of who am I, right? Where's my place? Now, see, that part you guys can relate to. Even if you were never in student council, you didn't run for any sort of student body president, you want to be in a club, or you want to be on a team, or even less formally, even in our own life. If you work, if you have a job, it's, well, how do I be a good employee? What's that role that I play? Or if you don't have a job, are you a husband, a wife? Are you a parent, a child? What's the role that I play? How can I play that well? And I think all of us want to do a good job. Maybe we don't have ambitions of being the best, or, being recognized as dad of the year or whatever it is, or, boss of the year. But I think a lot of us have, I'd like to do that better, or we're at least keenly aware of where maybe we want to improve within our life. And I think that's normal. I don't think that's right or wrong, that we want to have that role. But what does that look like for our faith, for Christianity, right? So we're doing this thing, we're here at church, we're reading our Bibles, we're saying prayers, but what is my role? Am I supposed to be something, right? Or how can I be the best Christian? What's really the guidelines here? What's the standards that I'm supposed to have? Luckily, we aren't the first ones to ask that question. So Jesus had his friends, these disciples that he was sharing, what does Christianity look like all throughout his life? And there's a story, we just skimmed the surface of it. We didn't touch it. We touched the very end of it last week. But I want to dig into this story further, where two of those disciples asked if they could hold official roles, prominent positions in this little kingdom that you're creating, Jesus. All right, we're in Matthew 20. I'll have it up on the screen, but if you guys want a head start getting there, we're Matthew 20. We'll read from verse 20 to 28. And this is a story that's, we talked in Mark chapter 10, but it's the exact same story that we see here in Matthew chapter 20. All right, so read with me. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons, this is James and John, they're kind of two of Jesus' best friends. So if you could kind of rank where the disciples are, you got Peter, James, and John are right there at the top. There's no ranking system, but it's fun to do when you're reading your Bible. But these are people that really knew Jesus, right? So the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons and kneeling down, asked a favor of him. What is it you want, he asked. She said, grant that one of these two sons of mine may sit at your right and the other at your left in your kingdom. So, what she's saying is give them a place of honor. They're kind of doing this with you. They've kind of earned it, right? Can they, you're creating this little kingdom you talk about. It's like this new system. Can they have maybe a little bit formalized authority, right? Can you give them maybe these seats of honor? They want to be best in this kingdom. And Jesus says, you don't know what you are asking. Jesus said to them, can you drink the cup I'm going to drink? We can, they answered. Jesus said to them, you will indeed drink from my cup, but to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared by my Father. So what Jesus' response is, and I want you to see, it says that the mother of these sons came to Jesus, but those sons are right there because he talks to them directly. This wasn't like the mom working behind their back. They were all in on this together, wanting, hey, can we get maybe a place here? And Jesus says, you're asking the wrong question, right? That's not even a thing to have. And he goes further, we'll see right after this, contrasting the formalized group of power that we do here in our world, in our government, and what it really looks like in the kingdom. Here's what Jesus says. This is the disciples' response. See, this is how you know that those James and John, they were in on this. When the 10 heard about this, they were indignant with the two brothers. So Jesus called them together and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. So Jesus is essentially telling these disciples, you're asking the complete wrong question. See, what they're looking for is something for themselves. Kind of like me with trying to find, what's my role? Give me a place so then I'll kind of know where I can go. And sure, I'll represent you. There is a little bit of honor, right, in being a freshman student council representative. Well, similarly, when we want to be something in God's kingdom, we say, what does it look like, Lord, to be placed where I can be an example, a leader, or how can I live my life to maybe make myself the best Christian possible? But what Jesus is saying, to be a great Christian, you serve others. You have to lose that sense of me. Where do I fit? What's my role? There's this dying to oneself, as Jesus puts it in other teaching, where we actually have to serve others. I'm watching this TV show with my family. I'm really enjoying it. It's called The Mandalorian. I won't spoil any of it, but if you know what I'm talking about, The Mandalorian, raise your hand. I just need to see how much background. Okay, so it is a thing. Okay, so they try to tell you as a pastor, be culturally relevant, and so I have to try to check those trends and make sure I'm keeping up. That's the only reason why we're watching it, right, hun? It's just for work purposes. Yeah, we don't like it. No, I'm kidding. So it's a fun show, and if you want to talk about it, I've got the pros and cons listed out in it. But one of my favorite, anyway, one of my favorite things about the show that speaks to me deeply is, here, I'll talk, I'm not going to spoil it. So the main character is the Mandalorian. I hope that didn't spoil it. But it's about this guy called the Mandalorian, and he's part of this kind of band of brothers, if you will, right? They're like a tight-knit, close group of like-minded individuals. But it's really powerful. Whenever they're talking about kind of reinforcing the culture of this group, they say, this is the way. And then everyone else responds with, this is the way. And it comes up throughout the episodes. And to me, it's meant to be powerful, right? Because there's this non-negotiable standard that this group of people have said, we will follow this as our ultimate authority over top of any sort of selfish desires or anything that we might want for our individuals. For example, I'm not going to give you an example from the movies, but if they lived in our life and they're all kind of sharing the same house space, apartment, and someone leaves the dishes out and doesn't fill the dishwasher, right? Someone could come up and say, oh, Mandalorian, no, remember, you need to put the dishes into the dishwasher. This is the way. And they'd all say, this is the way. And then you go and do it, But to me, it's this is exactly what Jesus is teaching, right? It's not about like what's best for me or what's this or how can I work this little kingdom, like maybe I'm low here in this kingdom, but maybe I can be advanced in the next. Jesus is painting the way. And it's kind of hard to grasp. You see these disciples following along, and Jesus is painting these pictures, and they're like, what? I don't get it. And some of them are, wait, can I be like elevated in this new kingdom? And he's like, no, time out. You've got it all wrong. This is the way. It's of serving. And so we have Jesus not so much saying, well, if you do these things, then you'll get this benefit. He's saying, this is the way of the kingdom. Either you're in or you're out. Like either you're a Mandalorian or you're not, right? This is the way. And so then we have to go in it. And what is that way? It's serving others. It's losing ourselves. I think American Christianity does this poorly. I almost feel like our human nature, our desire to want to be the best, to be better, to apply things to us, has us miss the way. We don't teach or preach the way that Jesus has. Here's what I mean. So many of us churches and pastors try to offer Christianity as a means to become better, right? So we'll do a sermon series on how to break addictions, right? Or how to live financially independently, debt-free, or how to help improve our relationships. But Jesus never preached like that. He never went like, hey, you guys want a little more patience? Come around, let me tell you a parable. No, he's saying, this is the way. Here's what it looks like. Sure, there's benefits in our life, but I almost feel like we try to water it down so that every individual that comes can take something. Like just think, how do people evaluate what a good church service is? Well, it's if they got something out of it, right? For themselves. They come in saying, well, I want to feel a certain way. Or if the pastor's good enough, I'll write several things down that I can take back with me that will improve my life. And they say, that's good. That's a good church. Well, what you're doing is you're using the Bible, you're using God in order to fill your life or make your life the appropriate way. But what Jesus taught was you've got to lose your life by serving others. This is the way. And so the church then has to reflect, well, how can we invite people to kind of lose themselves and to give of themselves, not gain things, not come to church in order to build themselves up or add certain elements to their life in order to be kind of this full, great Christian. How do we teach people that the way is to serve others? I mean, one of the easiest ways, and the way that I'm going to conclude today, is by serving others. When we gather, like when we say, hey, we'd like you to serve, that's one of the ways to get involved. On the one hand, a service like this doesn't happen unless there's volunteers that are willingly giving up their musical talent, or people in the back that are helping with the sound, or all the children's teachers that are teaching our kids right now. It doesn't happen if we don't have servants. But on the other hand, we almost have to serve. More than just sitting down and trying to feel a certain way in worship or taking notes, making sure that I'm going to give you something you can go home with or take from this. Well, we've got to train ourselves to understand that the way involves giving of ourselves up. And how do we do that? Well, by serving, by serving each other. And so, we say we'd love for people to serve once a month, right? So for three Sundays a month, you're here, you get to engage fully with your family in worship, but one Sunday a month, you're practicing the way. You're actually demonstrating what this looks like to yourself and to others. Well, here's what we do. I'll get more to that later in the application, but it's a little preview for where we're headed. But I want to talk to you about how do we make serving meaningful. For me, one of the biggest barriers to serving people is it feels more like a chore. I remember in one of my previous jobs, we did like a serving day together. We all went out to a farm and we painted a fence together. And it was kind of like a bonding event. And it was kind of hot, but okay, it's great. And then at the end, someone thanked us. Then we went back to work and tried to get everything done. That we hadn't gotten to that day because we were out serving. And it kind of feels like, am I doing this right? Because there's that nagging feeling inside, this is counterproductive, right? Am I growing? Is this the proper way of serving? And I think if we look at how Jesus was teaching about the kingdom, teaching about this way, there's three things that we can keep in mind while we're serving to make it meaningful, so that we can serve well and where it will actually benefit us in learning the mission of what we're doing. All right, the first one and second one. No, just the first one. I made it so far without doing that. All right, so every time I just click twice or 3 times. We see our selfishness in serving. One of the main things we can do when we serve is we can allow this to be a mirror into our heart and see, why am I feeling uneasy? Why am I feeling restless? Why do I want to be doing something else? It's rooted in our selfishness. We approach life with a me-first understanding, and that's normal. I mean, you only have your own perspective, right? You can't jump into someone else's. But when we want to do things for ourselves, and this is how we can get to where we start using Christianity to build ourselves up, to make ourselves to fit how our life should be or how we want it to be. That's actually in opposition to God's kingdom. That's in opposition to God's way. So when we serve, let's pay attention to our hearts and see, well, what are we doing? It's natural for us to want to volunteer even for our own benefit. So I did a quick Google for, that's a Google search. Yeah, man, it's such a dadism. So I did a Google the other day, and here's what I typed in. It said, why should you serve in a charity? Right? And I wanted to see, and look, I know Google, it knows me and it knows you, and so your result might be different than mine these days, who knows? But here's what they told me. The very first hit, right, was a blog just about why you should serve in a charity. The very first line said this: it may sound a little self-serving, but there's an easy way to advance your career, get networked, while you're also doing good for others. Serve on a nonprofit board. It's like, why do you serve? Well, let's start with it benefits you. Right? We can't escape even serving others for our benefit, right? So I tried it again. I said, why should you volunteer? I did a Google, right? I put it in there. The very first one is an ad, right? So someone paid to get that number 1 slot. And before I even click on it, it's got the little tagline underneath. Here's what it said. Why should you volunteer? It says, volunteering is awesome. It's a way to change people's lives and improve your own. Are you serious? Our culture can't even understand, why would you serve someone for their benefit and at your own loss? Yet this is the way. This is the way of Jesus, where we actually choose to serve not for our own benefit, for their benefit. He says that we're supposed to be last. If I go back, whoever wants to be first must be your slave, right? Fully submissive to someone else. If you want to climb this ladder, right? You're asking the complete wrong question. So first of all, allow us when we serve to point out how much we want this to be beneficial to us, how much we want to gain some sort of help when I'm helping someone else, surely this is beneficial to me. Analyze that. There's probably something in there that's holding on to your own kingdom and not participating in God's kingdom. All right, secondly, what else can we be thinking about when we serve? Well, we learn God's love when we serve. This is the way. Jesus said this. He says, for the Son of Man, right, did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. Last week we looked at this. You never see Jesus having any sort of ambition in his life. He's not trying to build himself up. He never runs for some local council, student council, or he never tries to gain any sort of power. Instead, he just heals everyone that's brought to him. When they're hungry, he multiplies the bread and the fish and feeds everyone. He is serving everyone else. He is demonstrating this is the way. This is our God, his heart for people in the world. And it's difficult for the disciples to see this, but when we serve, this is how we can experience God's love. So here's how you think of this when you serve. You say, well, you're probably not there yet, but you say, how can I imagine what God is feeling for these people as I serve, right? So you're teaching the children over here in Sunday school, and they're going crazy, right? And you're like, oh, what do? We already gave him snack. Give him another one, and you're trying all these things, right? Is there a movie we can put on or something like that? But if you pause and say, what is God's heart towards these people that I'm serving? And then try to say, Lord, give me that heart for them. I'm not there. I don't feel it. And then allow me to experience a little bit of what your heart is. This is how we fulfill our mission at the church. So Sarah told you that we seek to live God's love beyond ourselves. If we're ever going to live his love beyond ourselves, we have to know his love. We actually have to have that love. And serving allows us to experience it, or at least allows us to imagine what it could look like. So when we serve, we say, okay, Lord, let me love the people I'm serving in the way that you love them. Change my heart so they can be like yours. All right, third thing. To make serving meaningful, we also have to remember it models the mission. This is the way. Now, it models it to ourselves in a way that it rehearses it and practices it. It reinforces, yes, this is the way. This is what it looks like. So we have all sorts of ideas about ourselves, but when we serve someone else, we're reminded, pause, this is what it looks like. And if we do this intentionally, then we can start recognizing where the kingdom shows up in our life. And perhaps it's not where we thought it was. It's not in us gaining all sorts of knowledge. It's not in us maybe doing some sort of good things, but rather it's in losing yourself in order to benefit someone else. So we're still serving them, but now we recognize in our heart, it's becoming like Christ. It's becoming a servant. But we don't just model it for us either, right? We model it for each other here in the room. Whenever we serve, like on a Sunday morning, whenever we serve, you know what I'm talking about, Oak. Whenever we serve on a Sunday morning, the other people can see, oh yeah, that is the way, right? That's why we only need to do it once a month, right? We don't have to be serving every time, though I think that would be quite an experiment. I'd be willing to do for like a month where we don't have a service, we're just serving each other, right? I mean, here, not in my notes. We call it a service because you are being served. Right? It's like the church staff or whoever, the volunteers that are coming up here are serving you. It's a service, right? But wouldn't it make more sense if it was like service? like together, like all of us are doing this together as opposed to having it done to us. Anyway, that's, to me, that more embodies the way. But that's a way that we can demonstrate to each other, this is the mission. This is what it looks like, this willingly giving ourselves up. And then beyond this room, right? Our mission, live God's love beyond ourselves, like beyond ourselves here in this room. How do we show others who God is? Well, God is a servant. He demonstrated that with us. If we can get that in here, we can demonstrate to others, this is what God's heart looks like. If we are doing all three of these things, our selfishness leaves, we're filled with God's love, and now the world can see, oh, this is Christianity. You know, all this time I thought it was, I don't know, going to church or knowing the right answers or all these, or living a perfect life, right? Like that, with no debt, with great relationships, with lots of patience, no anger, and all these things. Sure, those come with it, but what it looks like is this losing of yourself, giving yourself up to serve others. So how do we apply this? Here at church, but also everywhere in our lives. Like do it when you're washing the dishes for your family. Just think of these three things. Just say, why do I feel like I don't want to do these right now? Okay, what is it? There's something else that's going on. There's plenty of other things you could do with your time. And then recognize, okay, well, why do I want my time so firmly? Lord, let me give this to you so that you can work through me. And then learn God's love. Who am I loving by doing these dishes? Well, probably the rest of my family. Lord, help me see that as I'm doing these dishes, it's expressing your love to them. Okay, and then how do I model the mission? Okay, Brad, recognize that this is what it looks like to be a Christian. Remind yourself, this is it. This is what it feels like. And this is how far you have to go to really live this out in your life. But then also here. So I talked earlier, we'd love for everyone to serve once a month, one Sunday a month, somewhere, anywhere. It doesn't matter where. We'll figure out how to make the service work. What's important is that we're doing these things, that we're practicing, that we're modeling the way that Jesus taught us. Right now, there's probably 4, maybe 5, if you want to count them, main areas to serve. And I just want to highlight those for you in case one of those sounds like, let me try that. One is a kids teacher. I don't know if you were here in worship, but there's a lot of kids in our church, and we definitely want to include them in what we're doing. So that's why they worship with us, but we also want to teach them. We want to show them how do they learn God's love and then live that love beyond themselves. We have a curriculum that's really good at going through the stories, and so you can jump right in with just a background check and then just meeting with me. Next week, we're going to have a special, like an orientation week for anyone who's new, or if you just want to check it out, where after the service, we'll buy sandwiches for you guys, and then we'll just show you around, like here's where the supplies are, here's how you check people in, here's how you check people out, just to demonstrate, here's what you would have to do, get your mind around it. So even if you aren't planning on serving in kids, but you're like, well, maybe I could do it once a month, feel free to stay after next week, and we'll show you a little bit about that. Okay, that's one area. Another area is back there in the back. So in our tech booth, there's sound, there's lighting, there's the live stream, and slides. Those have different technical needs, but don't worry, we'll just train you on whatever one you want. But again, that's something where instead of sitting here, you just sit in the back, and we just need you to help kind of run what's going on. Another one is our life safety team. So we like to have someone out front. Michael, if you can hear me, hello. Because we got a speaker out there. So we can't hear you though. Anyway, we like to have someone out front watching the door, keeping an eye on the classrooms. If there's anything needed, they would be the first responder essentially within our group. That's another one where if you just kind of want to serve in that role of being like a watchtower kind of guard, we've got places for you there as well. And then also, if you're musically inclined at all, we'd love to have you join our worship team. Our worship team has kind of informal worship nights where if you're like, oh, I'm not good enough or I've never done that before, we can get you included in those before you ever have to come up here and play for real or feel like there's some sort of performance. We'd love to have you be a part of the team and then just offering of yourself in one of these ways to serve. Now today, we're going to kind of cut this sermon a little bit short. I know, right? It's the day you've all been waiting for. But that's because we want to practice what we just talked about serving. So we've got, I kind of teased this in that weekly video that I did, but we're going to be writing letters to all of the ICU nurses at Castle Rock Adventist. Thank you letters, notes of encouragement. That essentially say, we see you, we thank you. They've been, for like a year now, working with increased loads, all these crazy restrictions on their hours with this pandemic going on. And so we just want to recognize, hey, we see you. So at the very end of today, we've got note cards out there in the lobby. You just take someone's name, you check it off if you've written it, because we want to make sure everyone gets one, or at least one. I think we'll be able to get some people at least two. So make sure you pick someone without a check. If everyone's got a check them off. Put a second check next to their name, and they'll get a second one. And then we have sample outlines. So if your mind goes blank, what do I even say? It's just like a quick thank you. We're praying for you. Keep up the good work. You could optionally put your name, but then put Beyond Church, like Brad and Beyond Church. And then let's just use first names for. Don't put a first and last name. Let's make it to them that hey, we see you. And then let's practice recognizing why do we not want to do this? What are those barriers? Learning God's love. Lord, how can I have love for these strangers, these people that I don't know? How can my prayers for them be genuine and reflect your heart for them? And then model the mission for each other so that we can see, yes, this is what it looks like. This is just a little thing that we can do together. And then to yourself to be reminded. So we're going to try that right as we wrap up here. But I want to leave you with 3 questions as well. Again, these questions are for today, for your family, for your community groups, just for further digging into what we're talking about. 1, how do you strive to be a great Christian? What are those standards that you put in your own life in order to be good, right? In order to show God, yes, look, I'm truly there. Number 2, where do you have the opportunity to serve? In your own life, maybe it's here at church, but maybe it's somewhere else. Maybe it's you have a boss that's really needy, right? He forgets like the emails you sent, you got to go give him reports, you got to do things multiple times, and that's where you can serve. Maybe it's within your family, right? Whether it's a spouse or your children or your parents, where in some way you are serving them and in a meaningful way. And then lastly, how can you make your serving meaningful? Maybe it's taking one of those suggestions. Maybe there's something else that kind of bubbled up in your heart. But I want to challenge us. Let's make our serving meaningful, not just a chore that we're doing to be obedient to God, but rather using serving to become who God wants us to be, to really model the way in our family, in our church, and in our community. All right, let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for serving us. Thank you for sending your Son. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for modeling the way and teaching us and giving us so many examples because it's kind of foreign to us as humans. I pray that you fill us with your Spirit, fill us with your presence, Lord, so that we might have your heart as we serve. I confess that when I serve, I'm still doing it selfishly, for my own gain or in spite of the outside appearance of actually serving or loving them. I pray, Lord, that you would help my heart and all of our hearts place the needs of others above our own. Let our hearts be changed, Lord, so that you might be able to express your love through us and our actions to each other. And I pray that would overflow far beyond our church, Lord, and go out into all of our community, everyone that we interact with, that they could see who you are, what kind of a God you are, and they could see your love through us. In your name we pray, Lord. Amen. I invite you all to